Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome. Take a minute to get settled. Get yourself a glass of water, beverage, a snack. We'll take a minute to just let folks filter into this virtual space. We've left a couple of tips, Zoom tips on the screen. We are going to be viewing a couple clips together today, so make sure that you're near your Wi-Fi. That will make the viewing a little smoother. We've also recommended that you set your personal computer controls, audio controls, to about a medium, so that when we play the clip, if you need to go up or down, you have that flexibility. And to those of you just joining, welcome. We're so happy to have you on this Friday afternoon. Almost August. Oh my gosh.
Oh, can't believe it.
So wild. Yeah. And thanks for making the time. We know there are lots of great virtual events happening right now, so we're very pleased that you've chosen to spend an hour with us. I'm Claire. I'm Atlantic's Director of Marketing. For those of you who've been to some of these sessions before, thanks for coming back. If it's your first time, we're glad that you're here. We are going to spend about an hour together. So the first 45 minutes is going to be a combination of viewing 2 clips from The Secret Life of Bees, and then also having a conversation moderated with these extraordinary creators who have made time to be here with us today. The viewing of those clips is dependent on the internet. So depending on how strong your connection is, that will be affected. If for any reason anything goes wrong, we have to sort of troubleshoot. We'll take a quick second, pause, make sure that everything is running smoothly, and then have you all out of here by 5 o'clock Eastern time. If you have any questions for all of our esteemed guests and panelists throughout the session, feel free to enter them in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can enter them at any time. We're going to let them compile, and then towards the end of the conversation, the last 15 minutes or so, we'll select a couple to ask everyone live, and then have you all out by 5. Other than that, just thank you. And Annie and Neil, I'll let you guys take it from here, and I'll see you on the other end.
Great. Thanks, Claire. Hi, everyone. I'm Neil Pepe. I'm the Artistic Director of The Atlantic, and we're really grateful to have you all here for our weekly series, our weekly virtual series, Live with The Atlantic. And we're extremely honored this week to have the incredible creative team from Secret Life of Bees. Before I hand it over to Annie McCrae, the Associate Artistic Director of Atlantic, who's going to be the moderator, I just again wanted to say thank you to all of these guys, and thank you to all of you for tuning in. We're sort of in a holding pattern and doing everything we can to prepare for when we get back to live theater. We don't know when that's going to be, but we're hoping it's going to be sooner as opposed to later. And in the meantime, we're trying to figure out ways to create interesting program, virtual and maybe even otherwise, as we get more to live entertainment. So thank you again for tuning in with us. All of this programming we've been doing is free, so if you feel inclined to make any kind of small donation, I think Claire can tell you there's some sort of little donation button, but we're grateful just to have you, and we're grateful for any support you can give. So again, I feel so thrilled and honored to have this incredible group of artists who we just had such a wonderful time working with them. So I'm going to hand it over to Annie McCrae, the Associate Artistic Director, to introduce everybody and moderate. So thanks again, and I'm going to turn my screen off and let you take over.
Sounds good. Thanks, Neil. So I'm so excited to talk about our 2019 production of The Secret Life of Bees, which had a book by Lynn Nottage and lyrics by Susan Birkenhead, music by Duncan Sheik, and directed by Sam Gold, all of whom are with us. And Lynn is amazing. She's on vacation right now, so she is in transit while doing this, which is quite remarkable. So first, before we get started, I'm curious to know, we're going to take a quick poll to see how many in our audience saw the 2019 production at Atlantic. We'll take a minute to see those results. The 4 of you do not need to take this poll. We know the answer to that. So, all right, we'll wait till it comes up. Okay. Great. So a lot out. Excellent. Many of you did. So that's very, very cool. Okay, so glad to have you all here. So we're going to watch a clip in just a minute, but the first question I wanted to ask was to Susan, if you could just let us know how this amazing dream team of the four of you was assembled, how it all began, please.
It all began when my agent who represents Sue Monk Kidd said, I'm sending you a book I want you to read. I think it would make a great musical. And I was one of the few people in this world who had never read the book. I read the book and immediately called him back and said, I love this. And he said, well, who would you want to write the book? And I said, Lynn Nottage. Absolutely, she's not WME, but she's a friend of mine. And he said, great. And I think, Lynn, did he sent you the material, didn't he? Lynn? Probably. Anyway, Lynn read it and said yes. And we were talking, this was one of those instances where almost everybody in the room, Lauren Schuler-Donner, who was the lead producer, and almost everybody in the room, and we had not spoken about a director yet, but everybody in the room knew Duncan's music and loved it. And the fact that Duncan had grown up in South Carolina and was familiar with Gullah and with the music of the region, there didn't seem to be any discussion about it. And when they asked him, thank God, he said yes. And we worked for a while, a little while, and then thought, well, we really have to get a director. And so the producers, of course, had their choices, and I think they had made lists and we had made lists, and Sam's name was on every list. And I think, Sam, didn't Lauren speak to you or something? And I think we got the news.
Yeah, I met with Lauren and she gave me the book, and I had a really strong reaction to the milieu of the book and wanting to make something about it. So I followed up really quickly about it.
Yeah. I do remember that we all sort of had the same reaction to the book, that we all felt, we were all drawn to it because of the story, because of Lily, and because of the whole milieu of the story. And I remember the first time we met in Margot's office, you started talking about the character of Lily and said you had very strong opinions about it, and we all were in agreement. So that was that, and the team was formed.
Fabulous. That's great. So we're going to go ahead and watch a clip. And Lynn, if you wouldn't mind letting us know where we are in the story for this clip, that would be great.
I'm sure this particular.
I think we had talked about this before, that if Lynn is in transit, incredibly. So I think if this is not the best internet moment, we're gonna have Sam introduce this one, and then Lynn, we're gonna ask you the first question once we're back, if that's okay. Sam, do you mind?
We're showing a clip from Lady of Chains, right?
Exactly right, yeah.
So this is the end of Act 1, and the Secret Life of Bees is about three sisters, the Boatwright sisters, living in South Carolina during the civil rights, in the summer of the heat of the most fractious time in this racial tension, and after the passing of the Voting Rights Act in 1964. And these three sisters have a spiritual practice they call the Daughters of Mary, where they worship a statue of a Black Madonna. And this song is the opportunity for them in their spiritual practice to tell the origin story of this statue that they pray to. It's a statue of a Black Madonna and within this song tell the story of its existence to Lily and Rosaline, who it's their first chance to see the Daughters of Mary's spiritual practice.
And before we play the clip, I want to say that due to traveling, we just realized the Sam Gold brain and Lynn Nottage brain being totally in sync, because Lynn was introducing it at the same time because of the internet delay, and many of the things you were saying were the same. So your brains are still in sync. So apologies, Lynn, for crossing paths over the internet. But we are going to play this clip now. Claire, if you could take it away. Thanks. And guys, just turn off your video. Thanks.
Come to the praise house, children. Come to the praise house. Mother Mary knows you're coming today. Good to see everyone looking so beautiful on this day. Feeling good? If not, it sure ain't like any church I've been to. What's going on? Come, join us. You too, Lily. Don't be shy. Mary belongs to us all. Just gotta reach out and touch her. These are the Daughters of Mary: Queenie, Sugar Girl, Violet, and Neil.
Not all of us are daughters. As we all know, Mary did have a son. Hey!
We celebrate every Sunday. Should we tell the story of Our Lady Chains? Yes. Yes, in honor of our visitors. It's been a little while, and every so often a story has to be resurrected to remind us of who we are and why we're here. My grandmother, who we all call Big Mama, would gather us in this very room and tell us the story of Our Lady of Chains. Once a slave named Obadiah, working by the waterside, saw a statue float up near him. This a sign from God, he cried. This some kind of holy lady, made of wood and black like me. Come to bring us consolation, save us from this misery. Raise me up like a lady of chains, Lord. Bring me safe to shore. Raise me up like a lady of chains, and I'll be a slave no more. I'll be a slave no more, Lord. I'll be a slave no more. Raise me up like a lady of chains, and I'll be a slave no more. So he took her to the praise house, open wide the big front door. She'd be taking care of us now. Come on in and hurt no more. For the woman, she started shouting, I know who that is. She said, this is Jesus, the Mary, 'cause he sets free one day. Raise me up like a lady of chains, Lord. Bring me safe to shore. Raise me up like a lady of chains. She grew so powerful, she became known even to the master. And one day he hauled her off in a wagon and chained her in the carriage house.
My Lord!
Late that night she threw her chains off, and when morning came again, she was standing in the praise house like she never left.
Anytime she drank her back down, wrapped her up in chains to stay.
Anytime she grew her chains off, and she cried. question you want to bring to Our Lady? Raise me up like Our Lady of Chains, Lord. Bring me safe to shore. Raise me up like Our Lady of Chains, and I'll be your slave no more. I'll be your slave no more, Lord. I'll be your slave no more. Raise me up like Our Lady of Chains, and I'll be your slave no more.
Awesome. All right. And Lynn's coming back as well. That was so exciting to watch. I'm just curious for, here we go. Any one of you, for all four of you, Lynn is so amazing. She's on vacation traveling and wandering to get a better signal. So for all of you, I'm just curious what it's like to watch this archival footage in this moment that we find ourselves in. So any of you who wants to speak to that first, please.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, it really makes me miss the show a lot because it's been a long time since well, it's been, you know, over a year now, and it gets me very excited to want to do it again. And I think, you know, the video really captures a lot of the great energy and the great singing. As the composer, I'm like, where's the low end? Because, you know, when listening on the computer speakers, it all goes away. But anyway, it's, you know, it's really amazing what the actors were able to pull off and the spirit of it. So yeah, it's fun to see it again.
Yeah, it's interesting. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
You know,
That's great.
looking at this particular scene, which I love so much, and thinking about where we were when we did the show last year and where we are this summer. Secret Life of Bees took place in 1964, which was during the height of the civil rights movement, when African Americans were fighting against white supremacy. And here we find ourselves again in the throes of the same kind of struggle. And I only wish that we could have done the show this year, because I think that it would have landed very differently. And it's a kind of show that I think would have allowed people to meet this moment and explore it in a very emotional and expansive way.
Thank you.
The irony is really something. When you think about, you know, how long ago that was, and look at us.
Lynn, my next question is for you. I was curious just the process in adapting Sue Monk Kidd's novel, which obviously then became a movie too, to make it into a musical. What was that process like for you in terms of the story?
Well, first of all, it's challenging. Writing of musicals is a very new experience for me. So put that aside. It's a very beautiful and emotional novel. I had read it some years before Susan even brought it to me, and I found myself very moved by it. But the novel is told very specifically from the white point of view about the Black experience, and we were hyper conscious when we were adapting the play for a contemporary audience that we wanted to move it a little way from that particular paradigm of sort of the white savior, and figure out how we could still honor the characters and the spirit of this beautiful novel, but tell a story that felt much more truthful and centered around all of the people who were going through different struggles during the civil rights movement. The novel, when I first read it, just sang out. You know, it was very easy to find the songs, but it was particularly difficult to find a way to tell a story that is fundamentally an interior journey. You know, it's told from the point of view of Lily, who is a 14-year-old white girl living in South Carolina who goes on this journey of sort of self-discovery and encounters these very special, singular African-American sisters, the Boatwright sisters. And the challenge was trying to figure out, how do we give equal weight to all of those stories and honor the story, while at the same time tell the much bigger story of the civil rights movement without it sort of strangling the individuality of these women.
Thank you. So Sam, I know like any musical, this took many readings and workshops and many years to work on. Can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about the story and your vision for it evolved over that time?
It's one of those great experiences where we were all working for a long time on the development, which is the best way to make something. We would work, and then we would get in a room and we would get a lot done in the room. We would work with actors. Often those actors would develop it over multiple incarnations and workshops and be with us as things change. Some of them were in the final production. So we sort of built the family over a long period of time, growing it and changing it each time, showing it to an audience at various points, getting a sense of how that worked, then going back and working on the material. The material changed a lot. There were many songs on the cutting room floor. There was many structural changes, all the way through previews. We made major structural changes in previews. It was constantly growing and changing and evolving over, I want to say 3 or 4 years of that. I want to say 3 or 4 years of the writers writing, us all getting in a room with actors from the beginning. This particular piece and this particular creative team really worked well when there were performers to respond to and be inspired by. So that was a lot of how the development worked from my end.
Great. And Duncan, as Susan mentioned, you're from sort of around the area where the musical is set. So can you talk a little bit about your musical inspirations for the songs in the show?
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in Hilton Head, South Carolina, where there are definitely a few Gullah and Geechee communities sort of nearby, maybe not so much on Hilton Head, but on other islands, Defusky Island in particular, which is, like a 5-minute boat ride from where I grew up. And so there, it is I have to say it was a lot of people that would go down to Hilton Head are, let's face it, they're sort of wealthy white people from the Northeast. So these communities didn't have a ton of interaction, but because I lived down there, we would go to Defusky on school field trips and stuff, and I wouldn't say hang out, but we sort of met the people in the Gullah community. And again, like it's not like I grew up listening to that music all the time, but I will say there's something in the air, something in the soil. There's something that I think that's in that environment that I think I sort of took in, because I was there pretty much from when I was 4 and throughout college. So when I was asked to work on the piece, I was trying to think, well, what might this music be? And of course, Lily and her family would maybe have been listening to sort of, folk music or roots music, sort of white Southern music. And then, other characters might have been listening to sort of early 60s R&B, and then the Daughters of Mary kind of had their own kind of magical, mystical music, which would come from their kind of syncretic religiosity. Like, it wasn't their belief system. It wasn't exactly Christian. It wasn't exactly African. It was sort of its own thing. And so what was kind of cool in the process for me was finding what this this sort of mystical, magical music might be, and in a way it was great because the palette became very, very broad and very wide, and then of course we had these amazing musicians and amazing singers that really upped the ante in terms of where the song started out and where they ended up. And also, you know, Sam and Lynn were very, well, I think, you know, I've worked on maybe 6 or 7 musicals at this point, and I don't think I've ever written as many songs for a show as I've written for this show. And that's a good thing because, you know, there's a lot of good songs got thrown out, but it was really a process of like, you know, separating the wheat from the chaff for that period of 4 years. And that was a great exercise in not resting on my laurels.
Great. Susan, will you talk, I know your collaboration with Lynn started first, so will you talk a little bit about you and Lynn working together, and then also how you worked with Duncan throughout the show?
Well, Lynn and I met, and we decided that we would make a list of the high emotional moments in the show that might be musicalized. And we each went off and made this list. And the remarkable thing was that when we came together, almost every single thing we had written down, the lists were almost identical, except for 2 or 3 places. And we began to talk about how to tell the story and how to shape it. And Lynn, I mean, it's remarkable. Lynn was new really to writing musicals, but she just had this innate sense of what would work, you know, when to let the music tell the story. And it seemed to go very easily. And then we brought Duncan into the process, and then it really began to blossom because we had some music at last. And then when Sam came in, which was, I can't remember how long we worked before Duncan came in and then before Sam came in. But once Sam was in, then we really locked into this method of working together.
Great.
Yeah, so.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So we're gonna do the second clip, which is Trouble in the House. And Lynn, because I sort of switched the order of who was announcing the first clip. Did you want to announce Trouble in the House? No worries, if not.
Lynn? Oh, she's muted. Here she is.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you're great. If you wanted to
Okay.
set us up for Trouble in the House, that would be amazing.
Trouble in the House is midway through the second act, and it's after all hell has broken loose in the Boatwright home. Lily has run off to town with a young African-American boy, and the women are very worried about the consequences of the 2 of them wandering into town together in 1964. And so June and August, who are the 2 oldest sisters, confront each other about Lily's presence and what it means to bring a young white girl into this sanctuary that they have created.
Great. Thank you so much. So we're going to take our videos off again and watch this clip, please.
Careful, Zach. Might be some trouble in town tonight.
Oh, don't you worry about me, sir. What's going on?
Y'all ain't heard?
No. Spill it.
Everybody's talking about Jack Palance.
Who he? Wait, the movie star?
Indeed. They say he's coming to Tiburon with his colored girlfriend.
What?
Yep.
Zachary White.
And he's gonna take her to the movie theater. Heard some white men talking, said they'd burn the place down before they let it happen.
Well, hell, if I had me a a rich movie star. Tiburon ain't exactly where I'm on a vacation. You have to do a whole lot better than this. Wait, where's Lily? Lily? No.
I'll try to catch him at the crossroads.
Quick, I'll come with you, that hard-headed girl. Didn't I tell you? They're just teenagers. They don't know any better. What do you do? Sometimes their optimism frightens me. That boy's a thinking. Calm down. Zach is practical. He won't let anything happen. You should have been firmer. I warned you. Stop it. Why do you always have to go to a dark place? Enough. She is our dad's job to take care of. Why didn't you just say it already? You still resent me for being a housekeeper. But remember, it paid to keep us in our granddaddy's house while you were going to school in Maryland. No. I resent how that sick child took the better years of your life. That's not how I see it. Then you're blind. If you hadn't been tending to someone else's children, then maybe April would. Don't you dare say it. That was a long time ago, June. Why would you let yourself be angry? And all the good that's done you. Lily's a child, in pain. And I don't care what you got to say. We're gonna take care of her. She'll bring trouble on the house. Don't act like you don't know. She'll bring trouble on the house. You fall for every stray you find along the way. With her voice and tail. There are things you just know that there's no.
Awesome. So Duncan, having heard one of your awesome songs, will you talk a little bit about some of the songs that got left on the cutting room floor? Just, I know there are changes in previews, and just I'd be curious about, you know, additions and subtractions and what that was like.
I mean, you know, there are so many that I honestly, it would be hard for me to, you know, kind of dredge up the memory of all of them. But yeah, I mean, let's just say I went through a hard drive recently, and I was just like looking at all these files, and I was like, wow, that's really like a lot of songs. So at some point, you know, probably I'll maybe put them all together and throw them onto the internet just for fun.
That is great. Yeah. A lot of the questions in the chat have been about a recording, so any things like that would be good.
I mean, well,
Yeah,
there was sort of we were trying after this production to do a recording of it, an original cast recording, but it just became logistically too tricky. But I can't wait to get into the studio, and hopefully with this cast and band. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but that would be a lot of fun to make that record.
Yeah, stay tuned. There's certainly an appetite for it from this chat. So Sam, will you talk a little bit about the design process, particularly the set, but really anything in terms of the design?
Yeah, the thing that was always at the center to me of my love of the piece and my way in about the production was the spiritual practice, the Daughters of Mary. And they were in their living room connecting with each other. It was a safe space to connect and to express themselves. And they were telling stories to each other. And that felt like I wanted our production to have the same relationship to story that the Boatwright sisters did within the piece. And for the reason that they gather every Sunday, the Daughters of Mary. So it's not as prescriptive as this, but I sort of passed things through a test of like, could the show have been something the Daughters of Mary made? Or could it have been in their living room? Could it have been an event like theirs? So we sort of started there, which meant something very homemade, something very domestic, and very simple. And where everyone is visible and everyone's a part of it. So like, coming together in a church or in a spiritual environment, I wanted all the performers, both the musicians and the actors, to kind of inhabit the space as much of the time as possible and as honestly as possible. So the band's all on stage, they're all visible, and there's a kind of democratic sense of their use of the space. And all of the objects used for the show are all kind of simply laid out. There's something almost like an altar in the space that became kind of where objects would be brought from into the space in a way that had a spiritual design that, like a ritual object, could be used in a spiritual practice. The objects needed to tell our story would come from this altar. And so those were sort of the organizing principles for everything. You'll see we were really lucky to have a theater that's actually a church, which made that whole idea very easy to explore and make good on the promise. So I wanted to use the empty church that we were making the show in. And you can see we kind of made a little A-frame grid of lights to kind of feel the sense of the Boatwright's house without doing much more than that. It was the empty space, this line of lights and a couple of pieces of, a table and a thing of stairs and some candles and some props to make the show.
Awesome. So Lynn, could you talk a little bit, obviously writing a play by yourself is very different than creating a musical with these three collaborators. Could you talk a little bit about some of the differences, and then also if there are similarities in terms of like, the writing and rehearsal and previews and all of that between the two?
I think she's muted.
I think, yeah, just unmute.
Okay,
Please.
am I muted?
You're perfect. Now you're good.
Oh, no, it's just saying that as a playwright, is that I'm writing a musical, we really have to surrender. For instance, how many
Lynn, I don't want to miss any of your words. I feel like you're just going in and out a little bit.
Oh, there.
There, now.
There's none.
It's better now, actually. Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yes.
So it's going to come and go, and just forgive me. But I was
No, you're good now.
There were so many powerful moments that I didn't want to surrender any of them, but I was hyper aware just as the writer of a book musical. And as a book writer, it's something that Susan had said to me really early on is that it's my job to ensure all the pieces fit together and that I really the character, the narrative, and really figure out how to build that story and to wrestle with structure. But in the musical, there were so many other people who I could lean on and be dependent on. And it was such a blessing to have Duncan and Susan and Sam and people who have been, in this medium for so long, help guide me through the process.
Thank you. Lynn is literally moving, so catching
I'm
the good
moving,
internet.
I'm
But
aware,
I think,
I kept it brief because I know that I'm coming in and out. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fabulous. I was saying how dedicated you are to everything, to be in an RV with your family and in a webinar at the same time. So we are grateful, and we got most of that, which is really wonderful. I think I'm going to open things up to the questions because we've had so many great ones from the audience. So one question that I might give to Sam, but really anyone who wants to chime in, was the major change from Sumant Kid's novel to the musical of this arc of May. If you could talk to that.
I'll take that because I know I'm the responsible party for the pain that it causes. I felt strongly that the musical, that in a novel you can go through many intense events and you can process them, you can put the book down, you can pick it back up later. It's a very different form for telling a story. And I felt in the musical that May's death, if it was going to be in the musical, needed to be the major climactic event. It needed to be the thing that pushed the story forward. It would be hard to have it in there as a B or C story. And I felt that Zach and Lily's relationship was going to be more impactful as that B story. And that putting the kind of climax of the piece on Zach and Lily was going to bring elements of the show together in a more holistic way than trying to accomplish a lot of different things for a lot of different characters. One thing I know, having admired Lynn's work for so long, is that she has an amazing ability to give a lot of characters a full arc in her plays, that there can be a lot of characters in her plays, but they all get their due. And so I wanted to trust that, and maybe I knew we could get there. I could picture that. But the more I thought about Zach and Lily and how meaningful that relationship could be to moving towards the climax, the more I felt like we should put our energy there. And in the end, we debated it a lot over these 3 or 4 years. We debated it, and she was in and out and in various kinds of ways over the course of the piece. But in the current incarnation, Zach's arrest becomes, I think, more important and powerful for not having May's storyline take up that real estate, is the answer for me. And I'll just say, just to zoom out a little bit, I think it's an instructive and interesting question about adaptation, because you have people who love a book and are coming to see an adaptation, and they might be surprised to see something change. But on the other hand, the book is beautiful, and you can read the book, and what we're doing doesn't take away from your ability to connect to that book and May's beautiful story in it. But the musical has to be its own piece of art with its own internal rules and its own reason for being. And so sometimes that means that some things that were beautiful in the book, just because they were beautiful in the book doesn't mean they have a place in the musical. And that relationship is one of the challenges of adaptation.
And also, one of my favorite pieces of music in the show is this Frogs and Fireflies song, which is sort of a lullaby that May's singing and perhaps Lily's mom had sung to her. It sort of allowed us to really spin out that plot point musically as well, which was, I thought, really valuable in terms of telling the story in the show.
So this is a fact that I didn't know, but one of the fans in the audience says that apparently, Lynn, you create a playlist that you listen to when you write new plays and musicals, which is something that's new to me, but very exciting. And so they were wondering if you had a playlist for The Secret Life of Bees while you were writing it.
I did not, because I knew that there was going to be an amazing playlist forthcoming, and so I didn't want to preempt that. And it's sort of a beautiful place to be, where you get to have input into how that playlist is going to be ultimately shaped. So no, I did not have a playlist.
Well, thank you. But I'm glad that I learned that fact about you for your plays. So a lot of people are curious about the future for this musical. And if you don't want to answer that particular question, everybody is very curious what the four of you are working on in this strange moment that we're in, if there are projects you're working on. Or you could talk about, there's lots and lots of chat about wanting a future life for this beautiful show.
Who wants to go first?
Go for it, Susan.
It will have a future. Maybe it's better to talk about what we're all working on, but we do know it will have a future when this terrible pandemic is over. It's supposed to go to England, and but in the meanwhile, we're all at home, and I'm working on one new thing with Emily Mann, and still working on one of the shows that is supposed to go ahead as soon as the pandemic is over. A show called Betty Boop, and we're still doing, still tinkering with the songs and such. We were supposed to have a workshop in April, and of course we didn't. And so we're using the time to work. But almost everybody I've spoken to is having a lot of trouble concentrating and focusing because of everything that's going on. It's really, sort of a nightmare that we're living through. Duncan?
Yeah, so I've actually been working on a show called Ma Vie en Rose, which is based on a sort of a little cult movie from the 90s from Belgium about a young trans girl. Lee Silverman is directing that, and Steven Sater, my longtime collaborator, is doing book and lyrics. And I'm doing another show with my friend Kyle Jarrow called Noir, which we were supposed to do at the Alley Theater in January, but I think it's going to happen next January. And yeah, I mean, maybe a silver lining for me in terms of this time is that I haven't had so many specific homework assignments, so I've been able to just be much more experimental with the music that I'm making now. And it's, not necessarily for theater or pop songs or anything. It's just sort of making music for the sake of the enjoyment of it, and without kind of a specific purpose, which has been really freeing and really great. And, hopefully there'll be some kind of interesting record that comes out of that.
Sam or Lynn, do you want to? We can also move on if you don't want to. It's okay.
I'm really taking a break from work. I think it's important that we like take the pause that we've been asked to take and make some major, think about major things, think big, and think deeply with the time. I've been, working back to back for 20 years, and this is the first time I've had that time. So I'm trying to be serious about it and thoughtful about it. And mostly my time is taken up with my family right now. So it's an important, sometimes very hard, but important break from work for me.
We heard Duncan's daughter on cue when you said
Yeah.
family. It's really kind of amazing.
You might make an appearance before this is all over.
It'd be a treat for us all. Lynn, I think if you're just on mute, but we'd love to hear you.
Lynn?
It's the way of the highway, whether it connects or not. Let's see. There she is.
Oh, there she is.
I'm going to take one or two more questions. I'm just pausing for 1 second to see if Lynn will connect. Let's see.
Yes.
And really, you can really mark the time since we've all been together by that place.
Yeah, there she was born. Yeah, it's amazing. So one question is, can you give new aspiring musical writers some pointers for bringing an adaptation to life?
Well, I wouldn't suggest having a baby and then writing a musical at the same time. It's better to keep those two things separate. No, I think the key is having amazing collaborators and writers that you're working with. With American Psycho, I wrote the music and the lyrics, but most of the other pieces I've worked on has been with a lyricist and a book writer separate. And I think that, that division of labor is really valuable, and, often three heads are a lot better than one. So, that's key. And then, of course, just knowing that development is really important. And every show that I've worked on has taken at least 4 or 5 years, and usually 6 or 7 years from inception to when it gets on a stage. So, it's just a question of being patient and having, really good people around you. That's, for me, that's been the key to doing something that works in some way.
Great. So I think we'll end on this question that's, it sounds like you guys are going to have a chance to address this very question, but if you were to do The Secret Life of Bees production again, what would you change? What would you do differently? Would you keep things as is? Would you add? Sam's like, can you not ask that question?
Stay tuned.
Yeah, you can also just totally say stay tuned. Stay tuned. We'll keep them on the edge of their seat. Everybody wants to just see the next incarnation. So I think because we have just like 5 more minutes, if you're game, I may just select one more, unless any of you want to say, I feel like, Lynn, we have you again in good connection mode. I can see your video perfectly. So did you want to answer the question about what you're working on now? That was, I think, the one, or any question that's been asked in it.
Sure, I was going to introduce this pause that was very necessary to me, just to reconnect with my joy of making theater, and then the death of George Floyd reignited something very different in me, and I realized that now was the moment in which I need to put my creativity towards something different. And in this instance, it's activism. It's figuring out a way to change theater, and not just theater, but change the world in such a way that as a Black person, I feel like I want to be here. And I realized just how long theater I have microaggressions and feel with sublimating my own desires, because I've been in a space that didn't necessarily recognize, the full complicated nature of who I am as this Black artist. And so I'm just really using this time to sit with who I am, and to ensure that I can bring the fullness of myself back to theater, and that it's going to be a place that is welcoming, equitable, and all the things that I think that will make it a better place for everyone.
Thank you. I think that is the perfect note to end on. I would like to end on your words, Lynn. And I just wanted to say this has been such a huge, huge pleasure for me to spend time with the four of you and to watch the clips from your beautiful show. It's really, really a complete treat. And thank you to our audience for joining this Friday. So I know you all are so busy with your family and work and just, this strange time. So thank you for joining us, you four. We all adore you. And stay tuned for future life. So I'm going to turn things over to Claire to wrap up and thank everyone for being here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you guys so much, all of you, Susan, Duncan, Sam, Lynn, especially in the midst of everything you have physically happening today. I know that for me, it's been a real joy to step back in time a little bit, and yet all of the beautiful stories and music being told through this show feel more present today than ever. That's both heartbreaking and beautiful. So I loved being in that theater as many times as I did last year. And I loved being able to watch these clips with you today and hear you guys talk about how you brought this book to life on stage. Thank you so much. I'm sure our audiences feel similarly. Certainly the questions proved as much. And also, this is a show about community. So it's especially special to be able to be in community like this, where we, if we didn't have this pandemic happening right now, we might not have been sharing space with you. So I cherish these moments, and thank you. Thank you to all of you watching. If you've been moved and you would like to see this sort of programming continue, we hope to be here on the other side, and we hope that you'll consider your donation to Atlantic. And otherwise, be kind to each other and be well.
Thank you all so much. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Have a great weekend.